everybody. Welcome to the Talking Disney podcast. We're really excited to be here to be talking about Princess and the Frog. This is a change. We know the random number generator gave us Sword in the Stone, and we will be talking about that in just a few. Our next episode will be Sword in the Stone. But we're talking about Princess and the Frog because of the big announcement with Disneyland. We thought it was just very appropriate to discuss this film. I'm film critic Rachel Wagner, and Stanford's here.
Hi, how's it going?
Yeah, I'm doing well. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing great. Thank you.
Good.
Excited to talk with you about this movie.
I know. This is a really interesting movie, both for Disney and for my own sort of experience in the fandom. Or just my experience with Disney as a person. It's an interesting one to talk about. And this came out in 2009, and I guess we should just start with the lead as far as talking about the news, which made us talk about this. So we found out that the Splash Mountain is going to be replaced, and I think this is everywhere that has a Splash Mountain.
I think they've announced Disneyland and Walt Disney World, if I'm not mistaken, and there's also a Splash Mountain in Tokyo Disneyland, and that one I don't know. If what they've.
So they are changing from the Song of the South Brer Rabbit characters into the Princess and the Frog attractions. Supposedly, this is going to be an attraction that'll take place after. It'll be a sequel to the movie. So I guess that unless they have them changing into frogs again, it won't really be a Princess and the Frog. It'll be Tiana associated in some way.
That's what I've wondered too. If they're gonna maybe have some frogs, but not necessarily Tiana and Naveen as frogs.
Right. Yeah, they could make it like maybe Louie or with one of the other swamp characters. Maybe.
Yeah. That's exactly. It's going to be very interesting to see what they decide to do. The press information that Disney put out, on their official Disney Parks blog website, has a nice, just one piece of concept art, which is the front of the ride. And it's got Tiana and Louie in a boat with like Mardi Gras stuff. And then also the famous tree there at Chickapin Hill, the drop of Splash Mountain. To me, at least from the art, it looks like it's like Mama Odie's place. That boat that's up in the tree. And then, of course, they've got a lot of fireflies and things. I mean, the concept art is very attractive, but they are not giving any indication really of what's other than what you just expertly stated in the it happens after the ride.
Yeah.
After the movie, I mean, after the continuation of after the movie. Sorry.
Yeah. I mean, Splash Mountain as a ride, I'm not a big fan of drops, so I don't love the ride. But it's nice because I also don't love getting wet at the park. So because then you're like wet, it's just
you're just
uncomfortable.
Like uncomfortable unless it's super hot and you can dry fast. Yeah.
And so I know it's a beloved attraction, but it's never been that beloved for me. And there's always such a long line, even if you have a Max Pass reservation, it's still long.
It's long,
but it is a long attraction. That is one nice thing about it.
Yeah, that's true. It really is. I can't remember how many, but I think it's almost a 9 or 10 minute ride, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, it's really a long ride, and really elaborate show sets with it, and a lot of the animatronics. And are you familiar with the history of the animatronics, Rachel? I don't mean to bore you with all
I love it.
Disney trivia. So in Tomorrowland at Disneyland, it's now Star Wars Launch Bay, but back in the day it was the Carousel of Progress when it first opened in the 60s, which was the attraction that Disney built with General Electric for the 1964 World's Fair.
And they still have it at Disney World.
They moved it to Disney World, so it's still there at Disney World, without the sponsorship of General Electric, but it's still it's basically the same attraction. That rotating theater that goes to 4 or 5 different scenes.
Yeah. It's a great, big, beautiful tomorrow.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So for the U.S. bicentennial in the for 1976, I think the attraction maybe opened up in 1975, but they did an attraction there called America Sings, and I don't know if you've ever heard of that, or that's one of the things you could Google.
I think there was a defunct land on it. I'm pretty sure.
I bet there was for sure.
Yeah.
And so,
which, by the way, the defunct land for this week, it's on Freedom Land USA. There was a park in New York, in the Bronx, in New York City. Fascinating.
Oh, cool! I'll check it out. They do such nice work down there.
He's so good. It's so interesting. Anyway,
no, I would thank you for the tip. I mean, I would definitely go check. I would definitely go check that out, because I know. I mean, there's not one that I haven't been like, wow, I always learn something.
Yeah, it was really good.
So this America Sings ride, it was the same thing. This theater, this rotating theater that had you go to these different scenes, and they explored American music, and so they had all these it was anthropomorphized, it was all animals, singing these different songs, from these different musical genres of American music.
Yeah.
And so the ride, I remember liking it as a kid. I went on it as a kid, but I don't know how well it held up. And then finally they closed it, and it was shuttered for years. But I think there's been a question of what to do with all these animatronics.
Yeah.
And so that's why Splash Mountain is so popular with all these animatronics, is because they were all from that America Sings ride, with the exception of, I'm sure, they had to make some new ones for Brer Rabbit, Brer Bear, and Brer Fox. But
it's just so weird, because already I know that they did a re-release of Song of the South in the 80s. It was like 84 or something like that.
Was that the last one that was a theatrical?
Yeah.
Re-release?
And yes. And so but I feel like even by then it was already kind of, just from what I've read and some of those things, like it wasn't a super popular property. So it's so weird to me, the things that they decide to focus on for the parks and the things that they don't. Like some of the most popular Disney movies you never see ever in the parks. And then like 101 Dalmatians, nothing. I mean, you might see Cruella occasionally. But other than that, there's nothing. And you could have such an easy ride with Cruella's crazy ride. She has this crazy car. Like, what a perfect source. And that's one of the most popular, but Walt Disney didn't like it. So I guess that's why. I don't know. It's just funny to me, the films and the things that they choose to have attractions off of, and the other things that they don't.
That basically just these songs from Song of the South, and that was those animated scenes. That they decided to build a ride around it. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think that Zippity Doodah is really a charming song.
Yes.
But it's a good point. It's very interesting.
I mean, and we should just say for the record, like, here's my thoughts on Song of the South, and we could probably do a whole episode, but I don't really want to. But Song of the South it's just not a good film. Like, I think that James Baskett, his performance is charming, and I see why he got the Oscar that he did. But I just think the whole movie is such a snooze. And yes, it has those offensive things, of course, but I guess to me, I feel like something like Gone with the Wind has characters galore and has offensive stuff, but it also has lots of really great stuff, and it's such a epic melodrama, and you can't believe that it was made in 1939 when you watch it. It feels just so impressive, the images they got on screen. It's worth it. It's worth having those conversations. It's worth it's a good enough movie to be worth it. Song of the South is not. It is boring. It is trite. It is it is syrupy. It's basically about these kids and they're getting bullied and getting advice, and it's just not. I don't think it's a good movie. Aside from maybe some decent animation, I don't. And Zippity Doo Dah, it's not a good movie.
Yeah,
and I feel like by Disney, by holding it out and not just releasing it and washing their hands of it, they're making it seem like this like thing that's way more important than it deserves. That's my opinion.
Yeah. No, I really appreciate what you're saying, because again, I remember seeing it as a kid and thinking that the animation was really fun, and that Uncle Remus was charming.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we just what a cute man. I'd like to go have him tell me a story. You know, I mean, just like very, 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 very charming. And then everything else was like totally forgettable.
Yeah,
it's
so boring.
Yeah,
it's
and
not
that's
a
probably
good
why
movie.
I was probably like bored. Like, when is the next animated sequence? You know, gonna be? Because I really remember liking those. You know, Bear Fox. I rewatched Song of the South maybe about a year ago, so it's been a while. I mean, not that long, but you know, it's not just completely fresh in my mind. But I remember thinking kind of the same thing. It's like, when's the animation gonna start?
It was bad, and so I think this is long overdue.
Yeah.
I know some people that are parks purists are upset, but I don't know. I just think this is a long overdue. It should never have been the theme to begin with, and so yeah.
You know what? I welcome the change too. I mean, I really enjoy Splash Mountain in its current form, particularly when I want to get wet. But you know, on a ride like that, because that's like the main reason that I wouldn't go on it, is if it's like a cold day or something, or it's at night. But it seems to make sense what they're going to do, and I think Walt Disney Imagineering, you know, the design firm that does all the Disney park attractions, they are really good, you know, and I think that they're going to create something with care, and also I really do like this idea of that it's a continuation of the story. Have you been on the Frozen Ever After ride that's at Epcot and Walt Disney World?
I wish. I haven't been to Epcot since I was 12.
Okay.
Yeah, I've only been to Disneyland.
That ride too, that Frozen Ever After ride, it is a continuation of after the end of the original Frozen film. They're wanting to have like some kind of a summer festival or something, and so they use a lot of the same songs but with different lyrics. And it's basically just a bunch of kind of little charming scenes. You go, you know, you meet up with Snowball again, and with Olaf, and of course Anna and Elsa and Kristoff, and Sven. It's really it's super fun.
I want to see it so bad.
Yeah, I think you'd really enjoy it, and you know when you do get it right, I know you'll really enjoy it, and I think that concept to me worked. I don't think it necessarily works for everybody. To me, it worked, or for me, it worked, and I think that there's again a lot of potential for this Princess and the Frog ride.
Walt was in favor of this. He said Disneyland will never be completed. It will continue to grow as long as there is imagination left in the world. Right, so it was not meant to be just sort of entombed on day one attractions. That, I mean, so much changed even in the first 2 years of Disneyland. So much changed, and so people that are saying, oh, they're giving it to SJWs or whatever. They're changing from a movie that is just not worthy of. It's not a good film, and if it was a good film, I could see their point. But it's not only not a good film, but it also is a film that offends people. Why is that in the park? There's no point. So why not change it to something that people like? To something, it has its flaws, but it's just way better movie.
Yeah. Song of the South, it's such a lightning rod, and regardless if people view it as harmless or offensive or everything in between, and so
yeah,
I think that this will be hopefully just a really delightful change.
yeah. I'm excited about it.
Yeah,
So,
I agree.
well, so share us your thoughts. Maybe you agree. People, maybe you think that they shouldn't be changing it. Maybe you're a fan of it. Let us know in the comment section. And so let's dive in now. We're actually going to talk about Princess and the Frog.
Yes.
So a little bit of backstory. 2009, when it came out, I had a break from Disney for quite a while, actually. I mean, I'd watched Pixar, but really from, I don't know, I remember I saw some of the films in the in the 2000s, but I wasn't really a big fan of them. And but it had really been since Emperor's New Groove that a movie had come out from Walt Disney Animation Studios that I loved, and so I was super excited for this. I thought it looked so beautiful. Same directors as Little Mermaid, one of my favorite movies, and so I was really pumped, and I went to see it, and I left the theater really disappointed. And I've learned to kind of appreciate it a lot more. But at the time I felt like the movie was really shouty, and there were just so many characters, and the plot and just everything was just a lot. It wasn't enjoyable to me the way that I expected it to be a fairy tale. You know, fairy tales are pretty simple, and I've never really liked Naveen very much as a character, and I just was disappointed in the film, and so I kind of walked away. I was like, oh, Disney, darn it. And it wasn't until Tangled that I kind of got back on the Disney bandwagon and found a movie that I really loved. And I mean, it's hard because 2009 was such a great year for animation that it probably would have won in a different year, would have won best animated.
Won the Oscar.
Mm-hmm. But it was such a stacked year in animated films with movies like Coraline and Up, Fantastic Mr. Fox. Really great year.
Yeah.
So anyway, what was your experience like? Did you have a more positive experience?
Well, so not really. So the I was really excited for this movie too. So, you know, when new management came into run Disney in 2007 with Bob Iger, and then when he brought on, when he acquired Pixar, brought in Ed Catmull and John Lasseter to run both Walt Disney Animation and Pixar. I just thought it all just sounded great. You know, again, bringing in Ron Clements and John Musker. They were going to return to, a hand-drawn animation style for it. Musical. It all sounded really good, particularly to still kind of smarting after the Chicken Little, which is just so horrible. And that regime change happened just right at the tail end of the production of Meet the Robinsons. And, that film, I think, is problematic too. I mean, it's good in many ways, but problematic. Anyway, super excited. And I left just feeling really disappointed, mostly. Just, I was happy to see, the beautiful art. But I really had problems with the story and just some of the choices that they made. Just mostly story wise for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's so frustrating because this movie has so much potential. I think it could have been
it has so much potential, and I also thought it was really important film. Because here's Disney's first African American princess, which is really an important thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I love Anika Noni Rose, and I think that the character design is wonderful. But I have some real problems with some of the decisions they made with that, as we'll explore in this.
Yeah, I'm surprised that they didn't have anything about this at D23.
Well, like for a
10-year
anniversary, yeah. At the very first D23 Expo in 2009, they showed, that was in the summer, and this came out at, kind of holiday season, if I'm not mistaken. Can't remember, it was Thanksgiving or Christmas. I think it was closer to Christmas. But yeah, I think it was like kind of December 11th, 2009 when it was released. We just looked it up. But so they showed that like the first 25 minutes of it at the D23 Expo, which was really cool. So we were all in one of those big rooms, and Bob Iger introduced it, and they showed it up to the point where Tiana kisses Naveen as a frog, before, and then where she turns into the frog, and that's just where they ended it. And so it was a fantastic teaser, and I just think every Disney fan there was just eating it up. We just loved it, because that first act is pretty good. It's pretty good, and they. There's some creepy stuff, which we're going to get into as well. But still, I'm with you. I mean, I started to digress, but I love that what they did in 2009, and I was surprised that it didn't give it a lot of love in last summer.
Yeah, because Nika Noni Rose, she was there at D23. She was there in the voice actor panel that I went to. She was there at a number of things, and so that's kind of strange that they did that. But anyway, I just it's frustrating. But let's dive into this story. So they made the decision to set this movie in New Orleans, and their idea was to kind of tell an American fairy tale. And so that is why they made some of the choices that they made. And I do think there is something about this movie that feels a little focus grouped to death. Originally, they were going to have Tiana be a maid, but that didn't focus group well. That was, not a PC and enough job for the first African American princess, which I get that. But to have her be a waitress, I guess, is better. I don't know.
Right, but this waitress and kind of a inspiring business owner. Right.
Yeah. So we find we start out with little Lottie and little Tiana hearing the story of the Princess and the Frog, and I think they're so cute, little
adorable,
Tiana and Lottie.
Yeah.
And I love Lottie as a character. She's definitely one of my favorites of this movie.
Yeah, she's a very good character.
So funny. Sure. She's great. And then we kind of get a theme. Her father loves to cook. They're making gumbo. Good food brings folks together. The father has dreams of opening a restaurant called Tiana's Place. And all of this is very sweet. Like you said, this is definitely a strong start to the film. And you get a real sense of her motivation as a character. And I mean, it's kind of classic Disney, the dead father character.
I know, right?
In these movies, but
yeah,
in that he was her inspiration, and that he had dreams, but he also believed that he had it all with his family and love. And so that's kind of an important lesson for Tiana. And she's working, when it gets up to her as an adult, she's working 2 jobs, and we get down in New Orleans. So this is, I think, a really effective song. I enjoy it. It's Randy Newman.
Randy Newman wrote this music, and I think he did a really nice job with the music. And they had Dr. John sing it, who's was a New Orleans staple as far as musicians go. I love the opening sequence. I think it's terrific.
Me too. And we have Oprah voicing her mother.
Yeah,
So
and
exciting.
Terrence Howard voices her dad, just for those couple minutes that he's in the movie before he kicks it. In Disney style, to have the single parent family, right?
But I think she does a lovely job. She does. There's a warmth to her voice. It's not just stunt casting. I think she did a good job.
I do too. And and frankly, you wouldn't really know it's Oprah.
Yeah.
I mean, just because she's, I think she's in character and does it nice. I think.
Yeah, it doesn't take you out of the movie.
No, not at all.
Like some celebrity.
Yeah, some of the celebrity casting. Yeah.
Not in this. I think this one's off. I think that's the only celebrity stunt casting in this movie. But it does well. But certainly in other films, it just sticks out like a sore thumb. Like your Home, DreamWorks Home is one of the Jim Parsons and then Rihanna just being so out of place for those characters.
Yeah.
And so this just makes way more sense.
Yeah, this really worked, and I think that they again were appropriately sensitive and in basically hiring mostly African American actors for it too, which was again a very good call. And
yeah. So one of the things that they tried to do, because they were telling an American fairy tale as opposed to your Beauty and the Beast set in France or your European fairy tales, they, for the evil element, they decided to use some of the folklore coming out of New Orleans area, some Bayou folklore, and particularly with shadow men and voodoo. And I mean I approach this somewhat hesitantly because I don't want to poorly explain other people's religion. I'm always a little hesitant because I've had my religion explained so terribly by people. But I will just go off of an article that I found by it's a woman named Michelle Gonzalez Moldando. This is from 2010. And she talks about the way it really offended her, the way that voodoo is portrayed in the film. And she says that let's see, some reason let me find the best part. She says, I do not know where to begin my comments on how this film perpetuates offensive stereotypes about voodoo. The Loas are represented as evil spirits full of greed and anger. The masks themselves are vengeful and end up killing Dr. Facilier when in inevitable Disney fashion his evil plan fails. This climax occurs, of course, in a graveyard, reaffirming the film's association with voodoo with death. And she said that the African style of the masks connects their sinister nature with African religion. And she goes on to say a bunch of different things. And the terms voodoo, hoodoo, and conjuring are used interchangeably throughout the film. In the end, one is presented with an evil religion that will ultimately fail. I did not expect critical race analysis or sophisticated presentation of voodoo when I walked into the theater. It is Disney after all. But I did not expect such a blatant, racist, and misinformed presentation of voodoo. However, the reduction of religion to magic is also reaffirmed in the curious absence of Catholicism in the film. And so Disney voodoo is bad magic. It just doesn't have anything to do with the authentic African diaspora religion. So, yeah.
I really appreciate it because you kindly shared that article with me, but before that I was able to read earlier, and I thought a really thoughtful and a good article because the voodoo part in a way I can understand why they decided to go that direction because again, as you said, American fairy tale, that's something that's prevalent in that part of the country, and or not prevalent but present, is maybe a better word, at least the way I understand it,
right.
But but it's also something that also, and maybe that was the intention. I find it very frightening, and but then of course, you know what, a wuss. I'm such a wuss, so I'm not the person to talk to bring this up. But one thing too, just about voodoo too in movies. I'm watching all of the James Bond films this year. There are 24 of them, and the 25th one, which is supposed to come out in April, called No Time to Die, is now supposed to come out in November. And again, we'll see. Right? Hopefully it will. But anyway, there was a James Bond film in the 70s. It was actually the first film with Roger Moore as James Bond in 1973, called Live and Let Die. I don't know if you've seen that one, but there's a big voodoo element in it. Jeffrey Holder plays kind of the main voodoo priest, and of course they're portrayed in this Bond film too. They're part of the villain's lair, and but still it's and again, maybe their representation of it wasn't accurate either, but it's still frightening. I think it's a frightening aesthetic. And they also, like in this film, is because there's a big important thing with snakes, with voodoo, and so these snakes they like tie people up that they wanted to kill, like the traitors, the people that betrayed the villain. They tie them up, and then the voodoo king comes out, and the snake will kill them, and it's gruesome. But that's what's going on in The Princess and the Frog. That Dr. Facilier in that opening. In his number, Friends on the Other Side, it's the snakes that come in, right, and kind of get the deed done again with all the masks and in different colors and things. So anyway,
so I agree. I just want to make it 100% clear that when I say that I felt like, after I saw the movie as a Christian, I felt extremely uncomfortable with the movie's sort of depiction of the occult and them sort of dwelling in that and in a way that typically you don't. That's just when it's just sort of more broad magic or more broad evil. That's different to me than like the way that this is handled. And it made me uncomfortable. And, but I don't think that has anything to do with the actual religion of the voodoo, so there's this depiction, and that's what I'm referring to as the occult, not the actual religion, the actual practices, which I honestly don't know that much about.
Yeah, I likewise feel very ignorant about it too. And my main exposure has been an aesthetic one. Where like again with the James Bond film, with this film, and then of course there's other depictions of like the voodoo doll and all different things like that. Like, and again, I'm not sure about their accuracy or.
Yeah, like I wouldn't want to have to explain to my children about voodoo as it is portrayed in this film, and evil spirits and the occult and a shadow man and all of that stuff. To me is, I mean, even tarot cards are, I don't even know if I really want to explain that to my children, young children. If I had children, that to me is very uncomfortable. And I guess that we could have a discussion about the actual religion, and that could be interesting. But the way it is portrayed in this film, I was very uncomfortable with, and I am still uncomfortable with it. And I just don't think that it belongs in a Disney film. As impressive as I think the animation and the singing and some of the other parts are, I just don't think that that's appropriate for a film for young children. I just don't. And I know a lot of other people disagree, and that's great. But it made me very uncomfortable in 2009.
Yeah, I'm with you, and it made me uncomfortable in 2020.
Yeah, it did too. Yes. Yeah, and so I don't know. It's frustrating, and so we find out that the Shadow Man is that he wants to take over the city, And so he starts this whole plan about how he's going to he's going to tempt Naveen. He's going to inhabit the Lawrence, who works for the servant. Would he be like a valet kind of?
I interpret it as like he's like the valet, because Prince Naveen comes from money, but his parents have kicked him out because he's broke. I mean, because he spent it all, right? I mean, he's not been a good steward, and I don't think he's been a good, responsible person. So they kicked him out, but he got to keep the valet, and the valet though is very disgruntled, right? He's very with cause, because Naveen is not. He's just being careless, not treating him well.
Right. And so Shadow Man sees that he can tempt him, sees that it might work. And so he creates quite this plan that he's
It's a very elaborate plan that Dr. Facilier has, Yeah.
And it was a little confusing. I mean, like I said, this movie throws a lot at you. And the whole plot, it wasn't until really I'd seen it a lot of times that I was like, okay, so she has to marry her because of Mardi Gras, because of basically what ends up happening is the idea is he takes the blood of Naveen, and so that Lawrence can pretend to be Naveen so that he can woo Lottie, so that Lottie, when she becomes the princess of Mardi Gras, will marry him, and therefore then he'll be able to get after her dad, who then
is like the sugar daddy of
who basically owns all of New Orleans. And so then he will own New Orleans. I mean, the whole thing, it's quite the scheme.
It really is a very elaborate villainous scheme. Speaking of James Bond, it's kind of James Bond-esque, as far as just like this megalomaniac villain who's very ambitious.
How do you feel about Naveen as a character, Bruno Campos?
Well, I don't really like. I mean, I know that the character arc for him is that they're trying to make him go from this kind of freeloading, irresponsible person to somebody who figures some stuff out, right? And gets back on the road to adulthood and to being a good, responsible adult and person. But I don't really like his character. I mean, he's charming, and they, again, I think the character designs are good, but he's not one that I ever really connected with. I mean, not that I would need to connect with him, but I mean, someone that I just didn't really think, oh wow, this is a really cool character.
I really dislike him. I still dislike him. I disliked him in 2009. I don't see the growth that I need. Even at the end,
I just didn't see the growth, really.
No. And I don't know. I just think he's kind of sleazy. And like he in the end wants to help her get her restaurant and everything. But I just don't trust him. I don't like him as a character. And I don't think that he is worthy of Tiana at all. And so that's part of my struggle with this.
Oh yeah, film. For sure. I mean, their romance is not really believable. I mean, the only reason that it seems like the two of them are together is because they're just forced in that situation. It's not like they really. I mean, and of course that happens, and of course in plenty of other films, right? But again, it doesn't seem like there was enough of a change for Tiana to really, like. I mean, I'm with you. For him to merit Tiana.
Yeah, they do have their friends on the other side, and I think that, like, we already talked about the whole voodoo element, which I don't like how it's portrayed here. But it is a catchy song with a pretty good hook, I think. And it kind of, I feel a little bit kinder about it now because we just never get villain songs anymore. So I'm just kind of like, oh, that was fun to get villain songs.
Keith, yeah, exactly. And Keith David, who's the voice of
he's great.
Dr. Facilier, he's terrific. and I agree with you. He gives a great performance, and in fact, I almost enjoy just listening to the song more than I do watching the segment in the film.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah. Okay, and then we have Tiana goes to the party to serve her beignets, which was such a gift to Disney. I mean, they have New Orleans Square already. I mean, to have Mickey beignets, I mean, this movie was just gold for Disney food.
Yeah, exactly. And for that wonderful New Orleans Square area,
yeah.
Disney, in Disneyland. Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing. I'm trying to think if anything is better to me in the whole world than being at Disneyland and eating Mickey beignets and drinking a mint julep. That's it.
Those mint juleps the best. I love the mint julep bar there. It's so great.
That is the best moment of my life. Maybe that's sad and pathetic, but it's true. No, I love that. It's so fun.
I get it. I think any Disneyland fan is going to get it too.
Those mint juleps are so delicious.
Yeah, they're
and the Mickey beignets, and you get the bag and you shake it. And I never get the flavored ones because I like my traditional.
Oh, just right. It's just I gotta go traditional for sure.
I forget what it is, but they're very reasonable too for the amount of food that you get.
Yeah, it's a pretty good price snack, considering.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they only have them, I think, at one place in Disney World. So that's definitely they have them at the New Orleans French Quarter Hotel, and I think that's the only place.
Oh, that's right. I think I read that. Yeah.
Yeah, and so it's really a Disneyland specialty to get the mint julep and the beignets.
Yeah, have them in the park. Really fun.
But she is working there, and she finds out from the bank people that she might not end up getting the loan, so she's really upset.
Can we talk about that almost there scene too? And I don't need to jump just a quick moment, just because that is one of my favorite scenes in the movie.
Yeah.
Because they go to a very different animation style for the song, and it's again just super charming. And then Tiana is kind of visualizing her dream, of opening up this restaurant,
right?
And
it's a great song.
It's a great song. And again, stunning animation. Eric Goldberg was the supervising animator over that, and it's terrific. I think. What do you think of that?
Oh, I do. I love that scene. I just got kind of lost in my notes, but yeah, absolutely love that scene. I like the whole Art Deco sort of style.
So this Art Deco kind of come to life.
And it's a very catchy tune, and Nikki Rose is a Broadway vet, so she can deliver.
She's good
on the song, and it's a nice kind of reminder from her mom about that she's not having to make up for what her dad didn't have. Her dad had a full life, and that's a nice, I think, thought from for the film. A nice heart to the film.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So she gets very upset because she might not end up getting the place that she wants, the restaurant, and she goes up into Lottie's room, and Lottie helps her and gets her into the blue dress with blue crown. And here's a question for you: do you prefer the green dress or the blue dress?
Excuse me. Well, again, from a clueless dude, I think. Personally, they're both very pretty, but I really love the art of the green dress because it looks like it's a plant,
right?
That really works with her transformation out of from being a frog.
Yeah.
So I'm personally going for the green dress, but I think they're both pretty, and I know nothing.
Well, anyway, I have an opinion about fashion. I actually think I like the blue dress a little bit better. It's a little more understated, but I understand why they went with the green dress because they don't have green in the princess lineup. And they already have, well, once you include Elsa, then they have 2 blue even though Elsa's not an official princess, but they already have Cinderella is the blue. And so it's the same reason why Aurora has to be pink because Cinderella is blue. So they had to give Tiana the green dress.
Well, and in the concept art for the Splash Mountain redo, Tiana's in the blue dress.
Oh,
just saying.
Yeah. All right. Maybe they're being more open-minded. They have multiple blue in the princess lineup.
Yeah.
But that was why. I mean, because Cinderella was the blue. She was, even though Cinderella's dress isn't really blue.
It's like silver.
It's silver. It's like a silver in the movie.
I know nothing. Like, it looks silver to me.
Yeah, in the movie, it's definitely silver. But in the Disney princess lineup, she is blue. And I guess you could say that Merida is also green, but it's such a different style of dress, and it's such a different color of green. But yeah, it's I think she looks really pretty in the blue dress, and it's also really sweet that Lottie, is caring about her friend and getting her dressed up and everything like that.
Yeah,
and so
because Lottie, even though she comes across as kind of a selfish jerk, I think she's good-hearted for sure.
Yeah, so that makes you put up with her antics. And so then we find that Naveen is there as a frog, and he sees Tiana after she wishes on the star, and because she's so frustrated, and so he, like I said, I feel like he's kind of a sleazy guy. He certainly is at the beginning, and I guess it's just whether you feel like he can kind of overcome that or not. And so he tells her, he thinks that she's a princess because she has a crown on, and so he tells her, will you kiss me? And she's like, this is disgusting, I'm not going to. But she ends up doing it after she hits him with that book, which I think is kind of funny.
Oh yeah, I mean that's again a really good scene, and back to that, when I saw the first 25, 30 minutes or whatever it was that they showed us at the original that D23 Expo. Again, I think I was excited. Everybody was excited. I was like, "Oh, that looks so cool! That looks so good."
Yeah,
and it was very funny. I like that whole setup too.
Yeah, and so and she says after they get turned into frogs, I think she or he, one of them says, the real power of this world isn't magic, it's money. And so, that's just showing her frustration at the situation, that she just can't seem to get a break. And so they get chased once they're in the bayou, and Naveen promises to Tiana that she will have her restaurant. And I thought that the whole scene when she's like, we might as well get comfortable. I don't know. Like, he's just so, I don't like him. I think that whole scene was like a little bit creepy to me.
Well, this whole bayou sequence is where things really went south for me.
Yeah.
Because, again, I didn't think that the pacing was very good. Again, I wasn't buying this romance between the two of them. And, though I do like that song, that Going Down the Bayou song, because it's, again, the animation's fun. We meet Lewis.
So Lewis is a gator.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he plays the trumpet. Obviously an homage to Louis Armstrong.
Yes. And he's great. I think he's a super fun, side character.
But I do think there are too many characters. Like, there's one thing
it's so busy.
You just meet for just a second, like the rednecks that capture them for a second. Like, who are they?
That whole redneck scene is just those frog hunters. That's where I just want to take a nap. I mean, I think goes on way too long, and it's just inconsequential to the whole plot. Like, what does it have to do with anything?
Yeah. And there's some jokes I don't appreciate, like when they get all their tongues get all twisted, and Ray says, well, I guess you and your boyfriend got a little carried away. I don't love that
like,
joke.
whatever.
That's not appropriate in a Disney
and
film.
Yeah, and we meet Ray, you know, the little Cajun firefly. In that whole thing too. But wow, that just doesn't work at all. That whole sequence doesn't work at all for me.
I don't think so. Ray, you're supposed to like feel sort of a heart for him, and I don't know, it just doesn't quite get there. And I think maybe it's just because it is kind of cluttered, and it is just so I don't know. Like, we've had love between robots, we've had love between lots of different things, but love between a firefly and a star, it's a little much.
It didn't work for me either. I mean, at times I thought, oh, this is charming, and then at other, other times watching it, it's like, no, I just don't. This just isn't working. So none of the relationships were working, and I just thought Lewis's character design was really fun. So that part I enjoyed.
Well, and most of these middle songs are very forgettable. Like they have the "When I'm Human" that you don't even remember at all.
Yeah.
So and so then the Shadow Man makes a deal. Facilier makes a deal with the spirits of the afterlife that they will be able to possess all the wayward souls of New Orleans when he is in control of the city. So then they go after Tiana and Naveen because the talisman is running out of blood. So I guess the plan is to keep Naveen as a frog and keep extracting blood from him, and to keep Lawrence pretending to be Naveen. I don't know, the whole thing is weird, but then we get the redneck scene that Tiana gets trapped by them, and then Ray goes up the redneck's nose, and I do kind of like the scene after that where Tiana teaches Naveen how to make gumbo and teaches him how to dice or mince.
That's probably the only scene I really like between those two.
Yeah.
And again, but I still don't feel like it's enough to make me want this relationship to work.
Yeah. Yeah, and we haven't talked about it enough, but I do love Tiana. I think that she is such a great character.
Tiana is clearly the best character in the movie.
Yeah.
She's so good, and they make an important distinction in this film too, and I think part of it is the time period, like when it was made. Clearly, a decade ago, but that your problems don't magically disappear by some other thing, whether it's love or a fairy godmother or other things that have been, that are more in the traditional fairy tales that we all grew up with. But it's your hard work and your determination and your vision. That's what's going to get you, your perseverance. That's what's going to get you through it. But I don't ever feel like it's heavy-handed. That they're just like trying to hit you over the head with it. I think it's done in such a charming way, and I attribute so much of that to Anika Noni Rose's performance. Is so good.
And you see earlier in the movie her not going out with the friends, not doing things, like
she
she's
makes a lot of sacrifices
for her dream, and it's definitely a different kind of dream than we've seen in other Disney princess movies.
Oh, for sure. And I like that a lot.
Me too.
And I think she's so terrific. And again, that's why I think it's a little disappointing that,
the movie isn't better.
This freeloading guy is the one she ends up with. But then also the whole thing that she spends so much of the movie as a frog.
And And that was a mistake. I mean, I really think the first African American princess shouldn't have been a frog for most of the movie.
I don't think so either.
And I also kind of feel like, I think it's cool. I love Tiana, but I also wish that they could have made a movie with a traditional princess arc with an African American princess too. Like, I think this is really cool, but it is kind of like, why is the Black princess the only one that has to work?
Yeah, that isn't kind of rescued, I mean, right?
Cinderella works really, really hard too, but in this sense of why is she the only one that has to earn her dream? Why does everybody else get it given? That it would be nice if they did, in addition to this, because I like this, that aspect I like.
Yeah.
But that would be nice too, to get a story of a traditional princess story with an African American lead. Would be cool. But
absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, I like just an example is the Brandy Cinderella.
Yeah.
Did you ever see that?
I did. And they changed the script on that, right? And right, where it's focused more on kind of like a combination of work with some magic thrown in.
Yeah.
Right.
With Whitney Houston.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, then we have Evangeline, the Mabel that Ray sings, and I did like in that scene there are some nice colors with the pinks and the blues.
The animation's pretty.
Yeah, the animation is gorgeous in this movie. They get to Mama Odie, and she sings "Dig a Little Deeper," which is fun enough.
Which is a fun song, and again, I love her that setting that she's in. You know, with all those bottles, the all that colored glass.
I do too.
So it really gives you a feeling like, meaning that you're in a church, right? Because it's a very gospel style of song, and also, you know, she's got the snake, so she like kind of brings, like, I think a more gentler view of voodoo. You know,
more of a positive character.
Handles it in a more positive way. I still don't like her snake, but she does, you know. And that's okay. It's you know, it's her character. But and what's interesting, I mean, and Mom Odie kind of in a way is like the fairy godmother of but all that she's really doing to Tiana, which again, I'm with you. I mean, almost like I wish Tiana had like a little help. She basically is just validating Tiana. She's just like, you already know what you're doing, girl. You're fine. You know what I mean? At least that's how I see it. And then kind of sends Tiana on her way. But so anyway, kind of mixed feelings about that too.
Yeah.
How do you see that?
Yeah, I think it's a fun song, a fun sequence, but my problem with it is that it's just too late. Her character is being brought in too late, I think, for her to really work within the narrative. And it kind of reminds me of in Sword in the Stone with Madame Mim. You know, obviously Madame Mim is more of a villain, but she's kind of a comedic villain. But I just think that
she shows up really late.
Yeah, she shows up really late to be sort of part of the significant part of the story, so you kind of forget about her, I think, is the problem.
Yeah.
And so I agree with you about the animation, though. The animator who supervised the Mama Odie, Andreas Deja, he said, I always thought that maybe we should distinguish ourselves to go back to what 2D is good at, which is focusing on what the line can do rather than volume, which is a CG kind of thing. So we are doing less extravagant we are doing less extravagant Treasure Planet kind of treatments. You have to create a world where we're doing it more simply. What we're trying to do with Princess and the Frog is hook up with things that the old guys did earlier. If it's not going to be graphic, is what he said.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that's
a good quote. Yeah.
That he said. And then he continues and says, all those things that were non-graphic, which means go easy on the straight lines and have one volume flow into the other, an organic feeling to the line drawing. So I thought that was interesting. And you can definitely see that in this film.
Yeah. Yeah, you really can. And I think that, the animation is really one of the things that I like the most about the film, because I get so frustrated with the story, but it's really beautiful to look at.
Yeah, and I mean, they had to basically bring back the whole 2D animation department for this movie.
Well, and then if you look at the end credits, like I paid closer attention to this rewatch, they also outsourced a ton.
Mm-hmm.
There are a ton of other animation houses that are listed in the credits because they had pretty much decimated their 2D animation team, after Home on the Range.
Marlon West, a visual effects supervisor, he says, those guys had the bright idea to bring back hand-drawn animation, but everything had to be started again from the ground up. Yeah. One of the first things we did was focus on producing shorts to help us reintroduce the 2D pipeline. He says, I worked as VHX supervisor on the Goofy short, How to Hook Up Your Home Theater. It was a real plus for the effects department, so we went paperless for Princess and the Frog. The backgrounds were painted digitally using Adobe Photoshop, and many of the architectural elements were based upon 3D models. And it says much of the cleanup, animation, digital ink and paint, and compositing were outsourced to third-party companies in Orlando, Florida, Toronto, and continues on. And so, yeah, you can definitely see that. But I admire the moxie of this movie, that they really went for it, and you can tell that they were trying really hard.
Yeah.
And so it makes me want to be a little bit more gentle on it than I might it does not feel lazy like a Home on the Range or
exactly. I'm with you, because I kind of feel bad to be so critical about it too, because there's I think that they really poured their hearts into it. I just feel like they had story problems, and they just had to finish the movie.
Yep.
In a way, it kind of reminded me of like The Good Dinosaur too. After when I saw The Good Dinosaur, it was like, and we all know, those production problems, the story problems are well known, right? That were going on with that film, and it's too bad, because it's just like, I feel like probably the studio execs were like saying, no, you got to finish this film. This is coming out at Christmas. You got to finish it, and they did, but it just, this whole final kind of battle scene, I just hate. I mean, this was sad. I mean, we lose Ray. Ray gets squashed.
Yeah, there's a whole scene with Ray fighting off the spirits,
all the evil spirits,
because he has the talisman. I don't know if that's the correct word, so I apologize if I'm saying it wrong.
I think it is. I think that's what they're calling it, is the talisman. But
and so then Ray is squished by the Shadow Man, and then the Shadow Man tempts Tiana with her dream, which I think is an interesting idea, interesting thing, that he can make her dreams come true. But she doesn't listen, and she destroys the talisman. And then you see the scene, which I really don't like, with the spirits and the voodoo dolls attacking the Shadow Man and taking him into.
They killed
Dr. Facilier.
They killed Dr. Facilier. Yeah.
And he's on the grave. So is he always a spirit? Like, he's on.
No,
it says Dr. Facilier.
I think that's just how they. It's like that just magically appeared, after he got killed.
I guess.
That's how I interpret it. I could be wrong. I'd be interested to hear what others think. Yeah.
But it's not a surprise to me that this woman writing the article was very offended by that scene.
Yeah.
I understand. that would. And so then Lawrence gets arrested, and her and Tiana and Naveen team up again, and she says, my dream wouldn't be complete without you. And so then we find out that Lottie can't break the spell because it's been too long. She just missed it. And then Ray dies, and they have a funeral because he's the star along with Evangeline.
I gotta tell you, one of the things I really hate are funerals in like the third act. It's like, and the movie's almost over, and it's like, really? Because I know, John Lasseter quoted this all the time, and we know Walt Disney said, it's like, for every laugh there needs to be a tear, right, or something, to that extent. And I get that, but I think I was just so frustrated with everything. By the time Ray died, I was just really rolling my eyes. So that's just me. But
you must have really hated Batman v Superman. But
that's what I was just gonna say.
I hate that movie.
It's like that whole Batman v Superman, that whole 20-minute funeral for Superman. Well, we know that he's not dead.
It's the worst.
It's like, oh, you've got to be kidding me! You're dragging us through this.
Yes, but something like, say, Snow White has a funeral at the end.
Yeah, and that one for me really works.
Yeah, because you've been invested in their relationship, particularly between Grumpy and Snow White.
Yeah,
you have an investment in that relationship.
That's where I think it's just perfect. Where it's this funeral. It's devastating, but I think, I don't know. I guess always in the back of your mind with Snow White, you just know that the prince is going to come.
Mm-hmm.
And she's gonna get revived and go off to the castle, live happily ever after.
This is a side character, and we just aren't as invested in the Fly. No. I'm sorry, I'm not.
No,
as Snow White.
And then he goes off, and it's cute how they do it. How he joins Evangeline up in the sky as another star. But still, it's kind of like, by the time it happens, it just, rolling my eyes.
Yes. And so in the wedding, they become human. And that's when we see the green dress. But we barely see the green dress. She doesn't wear it for her actual wedding. For her human wedding.
Yeah, right.
That she has in the church and everything. And she gets a restaurant in the end, which is sweet. And we like to see. But yeah, I don't know. I watched it again last night, and it's just a frustrating movie because I want it to be so much better. I just wish that they had not done the voodoo the way that they did it, if they were going to include it at all. I wish that they hadn't made her a frog for so long. I wish that they hadn't made Naveen such a sleazeball. I wish that they hadn't had so many side characters. And I wish that it was better. I just wish it was better. I want it to be better so much.
I want it to be better too. Tiana. Oh, right. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, especially with it being 2D, or like last shot at 2D animation for a long time. It's like,
yeah.
I want it to be better.
Yeah, I really want it to be better too, and I really wished that it. That I just could have resonated with the story more. I was so happy. I was so happy to see 2D animation from Disney back on the big screen again, that I cut it a lot of slack, I feel like, initially, but every subsequent watch, I still come back to the same criticisms, even though it really is beautiful to look at. I still have got a lot of those similar, same reservations about it.
Yeah. Well, we got tons of comments about this.
Oh, cool. Great.
Yeah. So I will just read some of them. Jonathan J. Northy says, I've watched it once, and aside from some of the music I've listened to since then, I remember almost nothing about it. I feel like there might be something about its ability to stand the test of time, but I probably should give it another chance. The Kevin critic says, despite its overly busy story, a charming comedy that deserves more limelight. Tiana is a great character, and Dr. Facilier a fantastic villain. Matthew Latham says music and characters were great, but I really didn't like the voodoo element. I'd rather have it been generic magic. And I really agree with him there. If it had just been just sort of generic magic, it would have been, I think, way better.
Yeah.
Let's see here. And Tisha AIM says, probably my second favorite princess after Belle. Cameron Ward says, I still really love the film, and we would probably have had more 2D films if people actually bothered to see this one, and Disney didn't make it compete next to Avatar. Richard Southward, he says, the first act in New Orleans is brilliant, but everything else gets less interesting in the Bayou. It's average overall. I think that's probably pretty fair.
I think that's a really fair one too. Or maybe just that I agree with. I mean, that I'm in accordance with.
Max Borg, he says, really enjoyed it. Would have been the film that broke my streak of avoiding Disney animation releases in cinemas, which began with Brother Bear, but it only came out in French in my area, so waited for the DVD. I think he's from Amsterdam, I think. But don't kill me, Max, if I'm wrong about that. He's from Europe. I know he's. Riku Zekgram says, some elements I really liked, some elements I did not. All the different characters and elements didn't quite click together, but it's a solid B tier film for me. For Streaming Out Loud says, I love it so much. I hate that it is so forgotten. Davis Gammon says, it's a beautiful film with terrific music and a lot of heart. Visiting today makes me sad that we won't get more 2D animated films. Yeah, that's a thing for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Matthew D. Klein, he says, between, say, 2003's Brother Bear, which seemed like an attempt to bring back the better days of Disney, and 2009's Princess and the Frog, it was really Princess and Frog that did the better job at accomplishing this task. And then Ryan says, my favorite Walt Disney Animation Studios film of the 21st century so far. The characters and songs are really great, and it was a great return to 2D animation. It's a shame that it only stayed for one more film, though. And then one last one. Daisy McDuck says, I love Capitalize this movie. I like how they didn't make Charlotte a jerk, because that would have been too cliche. I love the music. I love how Tiana works hard to achieve her own dreams. So there we go. Lots of different thoughts.
These are really great comments. Yeah, thank you for sharing them. Thanks to your awesome followers, for always giving such interesting and insightful comments. The one thing, and you had mentioned this too, Rachel, at the beginning of the podcast, but I was really discouraged after, watching The Princess and the Frog, and then a year later, we get Tangled, and Tangled just kind of, for me, just made the world right again. Because I just felt finally Disney was able to make a truly Disney film, but with CG animation. Mm-hmm. And that film was just, I think, just so outstanding in really pretty much every regard. I just love Tangled. So it just like, I don't know, kind of healed the wounds for me.
Me too. In fact, because the marketing for Tangled was not very strong. And
it was, they were really trying to be edgy, and I don't know, I just feel like they didn't have their mojo,
and they were really trying to appeal to boys. And so it did not look good to me at all. And I took my sister kind of begrudgingly, and I was just blown away. Absolutely adored Tangled so much. And it's one of my top 5 favorite Disney movies.
Oh, Tangled is so good. Yeah. It's in my top 10 too.
I had my last ranking. I had Princess and the Frog at 39. I had The Fox and the Hound at 38, and Peter Pan at 36. So, kind of right in that where I'm kind of middle ground on the movies. I have some things I like about them. There are things I don't. What about you? And your
for me, it's in my bottom 10. I have it at number 52.
That low, huh?
Yeah, I say this is not my jam. At 51, I have The Hunchback of Notre Dame, and at 53, I have The Fox and the Hound.
Very
I
good.
think that The Fox and the Hound is my rescuers for
right.
for you.
yeah. Yeah. So yeah, that's very interesting. Well, let us know what you think. Do you think that this is an underrated film? Do you enjoy it? Do you feel like us that it's has problems? Where are you at on it? We'd love to hear your thoughts. What do you think about the new changeover with Splash Mountain? How do you feel about that? We would love to hear your thoughts. And so, Stanford, where can people find you?
Yes, I'm on Twitter at Stanford Clark, and I have a movie blog and podcast at moviespastandpresent.com.
Great. And I should say we aren't doing the random number generator because we're doing Sword in the Stone.
Sword in the Stone.
Already picked it for us.
Yes.
Yeah. And so, yeah. And you can find me at Rachel's Reviews, all over social media, iTunes, YouTube, and on Rotten Tomatoes. And you can find us at Disney Talking on Twitter. So make sure you're following us. And we would love to have you get some feedback there on Twitter. We love having that. And you can follow me at the Hallmarkies podcast as well. Some really fun stuff for Christmas in July this month. So definitely you don't want to miss that. So thanks so much. And we will talk Sword in the Stone next.
Yay.
Bye. Bye, everyone.
Bye.